What is up, everyone? I'm Justin, and of course, 2021 is well underway. So you know what that means, right? In just 2 months, Zack Snyder's Justice League, aka the Snyder Cut, will officially be here. So in anticipation for that 4-hour epic, Zack Snyder, by the way, confirmed that it's going to be a 4-hour long movie exclusively, and not that 4-part miniseries he was talking about. I want to give you my personal ranking of the DCEU films thus far. Certain films in the DCEU will be ranked based off of their extended editions or definitive versions, if you will. Just to let you guys know, these aren't going to be full in-depth reviews of the film, just quick thoughts before I move on to the next one on the list. I even rewatched all of these recently, so they're fresh in my mind. Let's just dive right in. We're going to be starting with the worst film on the list and work our way up. So I guess let's just talk about number 9, David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Extended edition, of course. Whew, what a roller coaster this movie was. The hype was real because when it was first announced, I heard the dude who directed Fury, the freaking tank movie with Shia LaBeouf, and Brad Pitt was going to be doing this. A stellar cast was announced for the film. I mean, what could go wrong? But I think the first indication was when it was announced that the film was going to be rated PG-13, and that first image of Jared Leto surfaced. Oy. But hey, before I go ripping on this movie too much, there is some positives. I loved a decent amount of the characters. You had El Diablo, Amanda Waller, Rick Flag, Captain Boomerang, Harley Quinn. And you know what? I'm glad Rick and Harley got more to play around with in the extended cut. Not that it saved their characters or anything, but something. Will Smith was decent as Deadshot. I mean, he didn't stand out to me, at least. Enchantress, there's a lot of shit talking I can do about that character, but one of the coolest scenes with her is right towards the beginning when June Moon is standing in front of all those CIA agents. She has her hands on the table, and you see, like, Enchantress's hands come out of her sleeves and just, like, flip her hands over. And that's how the Enchantress comes to be. The last positive thing I can think of were Ezra Miller and Ben Affleck's cameos were cool. On the flip side, you probably heard these complaints tons of times, but I'm just going to tell you my negatives. I mean, when Enchantress was doing her thing, she was doing that weird hula dancing, and she had that line, like, "You don't have the balls." I'm like, oh, jeez. And don't get me wrong, Cara Delevingne is a beautiful actress, but I don't know why they chose for her to wear underwear. I didn't mind, like, the dark goth chick vibe. That was cool. But I've seen so many other iterations of Enchantress, and that's what you came up with? This movie drowns you with songs, too. Sympathy for the Devil, House of the Rising Sun, You Don't Own Me. And this is like the first 5 or 6 minutes of the movie. They had that original Bohemian Rhapsody-inspired trailer with all the sound effects syncing up to the song, and they figured, hey, people like this. This is received well. Let's just roll with it throughout the whole damn movie. And Jared Leto, oh my gosh. I know he's a good actor, but I feel as though he reminds me of if MGK played Joker. Kind of like you looked at how other people did things and you're just like, hey, that doesn't seem too hard. I can do that. He just didn't do anything to make it his own, and he just tried way too hard. It was pure cringe. And lastly, why the hell did they make Killer Croc gangsta? But hey, director David Ayer apologized for the film and admitted that Warner Brothers made them do the script in 6 weeks. That's freaking nuts. The reason I want to talk about the extended editions of these DCEU films is because there's a scene where Jared Leto is talking to Harley Quinn, and he's like, I'm an idea, a state of mind. So I'm just like, okay, so just like in Gotham, Joker says he's an idea. So there could be other Jokers in future DC films. Maybe that's how they can wipe Jared Leto out of this. Closing thoughts with this one, the characters I did like in this film are coming back for James Gunn's Suicide Squad later this year, for the most part. David Ayer's Suicide Squad Extended Edition gets a 4 out of 10. But who knows, maybe we'll see the Ayer cut later this year. At least that's what I'm hearing from him. Next up is number 8, Wonder Woman 1984. I did a full spoiler review of this with a buddy of mine, but if you want the shortened version, that basically is Patty Jenkins missed the mark with this film. Continuity errors left and right. I mean, you guys probably already know one of the major ones at the end of Batman vs. Superman. Diana says, I turned my back on mankind 100 years ago, but you're still fighting people in 1984? Yeah, that makes sense. The first movie felt like a war movie with some light comedy and fantasy elements sprinkled in. This one, this feels like a cheap cookie-cutter superhero film, reminiscent of Spider-Man 3. 2 villains end up crossing paths and working together. One doesn't become their true form until the end. I mean, I don't think I'm wrong. But hey, it's 2021 and we need some positivity. I loved Gal Gadot's emotional range in this film. Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig did a pretty good job in my opinion, although until they did her character dirty at the end of the film. They should have set her character up in this one and then went all in like an Indiana Jones treasure hunt type film for the next movie. Be in the jungle, all remote and whatnot, so no one sees Diana or Cheetah or anything, so the whole continuity where she turned her back on mankind can still make some sense. Don't get me wrong, some of the DCEU films have thrown slight continuity out the window. But for the most part, I think they've been doing a pretty good job, but this one just ruined all that. Hans Zimmer's soundtrack was stellar, and seeing Diana finally let go of Steve Trevor was super emotional. Unfortunately, I just couldn't save this film from being nothing more than mediocre. Wonder Woman 1984 gets a 5.5 out of 10. So what am I going to pick for number 7? I know this is a hot topic right now, and despite what it says in the opening credits, I'm going to be talking about Joss Whedon's Justice League. Opposite of what a decent amount of people thought, I actually like this film. Hearing Hans Zimmer, John Williams, and Danny Elfman's music all unified in one film, that was pretty cool. I mean, trust me, I know, this film will be forgotten in about 2 months, but hey, you gotta enjoy what you got for now, right? The cast did well too. Ray Fisher playing Cyborg was the standout for me. Even though a lot of his stuff was cut, I just really felt for the character. But with everything going on right now, with him being taken out of the Flash movie, I just don't know if he's going to return to the role again. The negatives, as far as editing goes, it just felt choppy, like you knew there was a lot more that had to have been filmed for this movie. Henry Cavill's mustache, of course, that just looks weird. Like a bunch of different scenes, you just see his lip all like blurred, like you couldn't have really CGI lip, they just like blurred it in certain spots. Why? Also, anyone else notice now that most of the Amazons on Themyscira are wearing like bikinis? That was a little weird. Other stupid things, Superman pulling Batman close and saying, "Do you bleed?" I'm like, ugh. I know that was a Joss Whedon scene too. J.K. Simmons was posting pictures on Instagram and Twitter. Dude was getting ridiculously ripped for Commissioner Gordon. And he had, what, 2 minutes of screen time in this cut? And the way Ezra Miller's Flash does his running, it's so inconsistent. Sometimes he's like, when you see like his electricity running around. But other times when he does it, he's just like, figure skating. I don't know what the hell you want to call it. Other than that, Steppenwolf, I didn't hate him. He had screen presence throughout the film. He was menacing. Not a standout villain or anything, but he got the job done. And the third act of the film was pretty fun, I'm not gonna lie. Seeing the League work together and not just fighting, but saving people in the process. I dug it. The Superman Flash race mid-credits scene, it just didn't need to be there, man. Like, I've seen it a million times before in comics, cartoons, Supergirl. It's just fan service not done properly. On the other hand, I freaking loved the post-credit scene with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke, Joe Manganiello in the role. Whew. I would have loved to see an R-rated movie with Deathstroke in it. But in the end, like I said, for this cut, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Joss Whedon's Justice League gets a 6 out of 10. Number 6 goes to Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. You know I'm talking about that Ultimate Edition. And first off, I know people hated the infamous, like, "How do you know that name, Martha?" scene, and I get it. There was a lot of stuff in the film that was just unnecessary too. Don't get me wrong, this scene was beautifully edited, but I didn't need to see Bruce Wayne's parents die in a 4-minute sequence again. What is this, like the 15th time, I think, we've seen Bruce Wayne's parents die in the past 20 years? What I think they could have done is, the scene where they had the Flash appears like, Bruce, and then they did that other future nightmare scene where Batman was shooting people with guns. Instead of doing those 2 scenes, they just could have had a flashback of his parents getting killed, maybe like 20 seconds, and would have fit a lot better. I was fine with that scene where Bruce Wayne and Diana are on their computers and they show the Aquaman logo, the Flash logo and stuff, like there's files on them already. But why did you feel the need to click on them individually and showcase them? That took up so much time. Positives? I mean, the Ultimate Edition does paint Superman in a slightly kinder light. The bomb in the courthouse, we find out, was lead-lined in that dude's wheelchair. Okay, so Superman wasn't a dick because he didn't see the bomb. It shows more clips of him saving people and doing his reporting gig, and I appreciate that. When they killed off Jimmy Olsen's character, I mean, I didn't care too much. I know some fans were outraged, and I don't get why. I mean, we've seen multiple iterations of his character in Smallville, Supergirl, like, I don't get it. It's just not a big deal to me. Ben Affleck killed it as Batman, though. His version offers something new to the table. He's a more seasoned Batman who's a little bit more lenient on his morals. Jesse Eisenberg, to my surprise, he was pretty entertaining as Lex Luthor Jr. There's a few moments he acted a little jokerish, but that didn't bother me. I like how he saw Superman and Batman fighting as biblical. Gods and men going up against one another. Man versus Superman. Come on now. You guys know you've wanted to see that shit for years. Oh, and you can't forget Gal Gadot's badass introduction as Wonder Woman. She even came with her own theme. Lastly, when we get introduced to adult Bruce Wayne at the beginning of the film, he witnesses all of the chaos and destruction Superman is causing in Man of Steel when he fights Zod. And what does he do? He freaking goes into the shit during an alien invasion to save people. The scene was powerful, man. And Doomsday, it was a whatever thing, not much to talk about there. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice gets a 6.5 out of 10. From here on in, I'm going to be talking about the last 5 films, which are all great in their own sense. It's just a matter of where I put them on my list. Number 5 goes to Birds of Prey. I mean, a fun DC Comics Deadpool style film. Who wouldn't love that? I'm glad Margot Robbie came back to this role after the hate the first Suicide Squad film got. She killed it in this though. You could tell she just had such a fun time, and the action scenes with her in it, choreographed by some of the people who worked on John Wick, and it shows. The supporting cast, they did a pretty good job too. I mean, this movie wasn't a financial success though. Some of that due to the fact that COVID-19 was starting to be a thing. And also, you got to take into consideration the weird marketing they did with the title. Originally, it was like Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. And then movie theaters were like, nah, it's too long. And they had it Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, or Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. Make up your mind. Even though I don't think a sequel film's going to happen, I would love to see an HBO Max series with these girls in it. They acknowledged the other DCU films subtly enough in a way where this film still standing on its own. And Ewan McGregor playing the crime lord and misogynistic Black Mask, he was awesome. Small gripe, but I would have loved to have seen Ewan McGregor wearing the Black Mask more frequently in the movie. I mean, he wore it for like, what, a minute or two at the end? But I get it. You have to sell the actor's face in a film. Dude's crazy, though. The scene where he's literally peeling his victims' faces off, and he's gonna let one of them live until she's crying. He's like, is that a snot bubble? Ew. Oh, I've changed my mind. I was dying when I heard that. They blended the humor so well with the stylized action. Was the R rating necessary? I mean, I preferred it to be R-rated, and I loved it that way. But they didn't go like full in-depth, like intestines hanging out and all this crazily over-the-top F-word every 3 seconds type of shit. But I think they probably would have benefited from having PG-13 in theaters, more money for them, and then having an unrated cut when they released it on Blu-ray. The only thing I really wish they took out was that weird scene where Harley Quinn was all loopy and she did that dance number. It felt out of place, sorry. This movie has rewatchability though, let me tell you. Birds of Prey gets an 8 out of 10. I'm pretty sure you guys knew this one would be high on my list, but number 4 goes to Wonder Woman. This film took me by surprise. I mean, it didn't really fall into a lot of your typical superhero cliches. I mean, it was more or less a war film. We get introduced to an island of badass female warriors. One of them, Diana Prince, comes over to our world to bring hope during dark times. So it's a fish out of water scenario with great action and a badass rock theme that we heard in Batman vs. Superman. Hell yeah. And the villains, they weren't bad. Dr. Poison was a functional henchman, or should I say henchwoman. Ludendorff was cool. Ares, don't get me wrong, I didn't mind the setup for him. I think they could have done a little bit more with David DeLuis's character throughout the film. But that wasn't my biggest gripe. My biggest gripe is him turning into this crazy CGI beast at the end. And this is the way his head shows through the helmet. It just didn't look right. Like, this whole movie was a war-style film. And then this final ending battle turns into a huge CGI fantasy thing. It was just a little weird. And I know, like, Ares from the Greek gods and the DC Comics version of Ares have differences. Like, in this one, he slings lightning and has, like, telepathic abilities. That was just too hokey for me. He just seemed too OP and out of place. Other than that, I didn't really have any negatives. Etta Candy and Steve Trevor were great comedic relief, and Gal Gadot's first solo adventure as Wonder Woman was a success. Just like Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, directed by Patty Jenkins, gets an 8 out of 10. Number 3 was probably the best spectacle movie in the DCEU, and that goes to James Wan's Aquaman. From the beginning, when you see Nicole Kidman fighting off those Atlantean soldiers, you know you're in for one action-packed ride. Jason Momoa, he did something crazy. He managed to turn a dorky comic book character into a badass. Like, no one in their right mind will diss this character now. When we got introduced to Atlantis in this film for the first time, I could barely believe my eyes. The culture, the creatures, the overall scope, and all the vibrant colors. God damn. Hats off to the VFX department for bringing this underwater kingdom to life. And I just loved the motion they had when they were underwater too. If you guys wanted to know how they filmed that, go check out the behind the scenes. It's really cool. The villains too. Wonder Woman 1984 could have learned something from this film. How to do two villains properly. Ocean Master is probably one of my favorite baddies in the DCEU so far. And hell, even the way they set up Black Manta for future DC films was done properly. Not only the bad guys, but again, I love the supporting cast in this film. Negatives? I mean, there wasn't too much. Some of the song choices were a little weird. A Pitbull remix of Africa by Toto, and it's set to Aquaman and Mira like coming out of the water Baywatch style. For real? And we get this weird 90s style montage for some reason set to music when Black Manta's forging and altering his armor. He's doing goofy shit. He almost shoots himself with one of the laser blasts. It just felt too hokey. Those things definitely took me out of the moment, but hey, even James Wan said Aquaman 2 will have a slightly more serious tone. Amber Heard as Mara, she was functional, but with all the shit that's going on with Johnny Depp, please recast her in Aquaman 2. Despite those few gripes, I will never get tired of watching this movie. Aquaman gets an 8.5 out of 10. Number 2 goes to the hilarious, heartfelt family adventure, Shazam. For those interested, I actually went to the filming locations of this movie, so click the link at the end of the video if you want to see that. But what can I say about this film? I loved every aspect of it. First of all, it takes place in Philadelphia, and I grew up right outside the city, so it hit close to home. It's got so much humor in it too, thanks to the hilarious duo of Zachary Levi and Jack Dylan Grazer. And of course, the supporting cast has some laughs. The coming-of-age aspect really drew me in, and seeing all of his foster siblings unite together and become true heroes in the end was a sight to see. Mark Strong as Savannah worked for me. I mean, mind you, he's not supposed to be a super iconic, memorable villain. Like, there's a scene where Shazam's looking at him, he's like, oh, you're like a bad guy, right? Like, that's implying he's supposed to be some cookie-cutter villain. Our hero's orchestral theme was really uplifting and empowering, thanks to the composer Benjamin Wallfish. And of course, certain musical tracks from Queen and 21 Pilots were a real treat to hear, and they fit. I don't really have any negatives about the film. The lore, the sense of wonder, the humor, action, performances by Asher Angel and the entire cast, and even real emotional moments like the scene where Billy finally finds his mom and he finds out that the mom willingly let him go as a kid. I mean, how crazy is that for a part of a superhero origin? Thank you to the horror short film guru David F. Sandberg for making this film. Shazam gets a 9 out of 10. So if y'all have been keeping track, there's only one film left for first place. My favorite film in the DCEU goes to Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. This movie is what kickstarted all, and what a way to do it. A cinematic masterpiece that finally tells the story of Superman from a different angle. Seeing the character viewed as an alien really made me feel for him. I mean, imagine as a kid having to hold back beating someone up because you might kill them. To see people suffer and restrict yourself from saving them because the world isn't ready to accept someone from an alien planet yet. And this movie showed the best depiction of Superman's weakness that I've ever seen. I mean, obviously we know it's kryptonite, but it's explained that it's more or less the atmosphere from Krypton that makes him weak because he was raised on Earth, the sun is what gives him his power, so it kind of makes sense that another planet's atmosphere is what weakens him. Henry Cavill made for a great, complex character with room to grow, and that's what I loved about this iteration. He screws up, he's not perfect, and it's probably going to take a few movies to get to that Superman Boy Scout version of the character we all know and love. And Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel theme, I believe it's called What Are You Going to Do When You're Not Saving the World? It just starts out so quiet with the piano, dun, 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 and then it builds and builds. Like, I feel like in the movie, when Superman grows as a character and when he starts being more of the hero, that's when the song ramps up. And like, if you can take me on an emotional superhero journey with just the music of the film, then you've done your job right. For me, it easily blows every other superhero theme out of the water. The final fight got a little messy with CGI, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there was times it definitely looked like a video game, and I get it, it's Superman. You have to do CGI. you have to have him flying through buildings and stuff, and it's very hard to try to pull that off practical. But I feel like if you just spent a little bit more time animating, it would have made for a less cartoony fight. Michael Shannon played General Zod brilliantly. I definitely saw the movie from his perspective. Russell Crowe, Lawrence Fishburne, everyone else killed it too. This movie needs a sequel though. Bring Henry Cavill back. This is what the fans deserve. And the stuff people complained about, Superman snapping Zod's neck, or how Jonathan Kent passed away, I mean, I just appreciated Zack Snyder did something different, and it made sense to me. So my favorite film in the DCEU, Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, gets a 9.5 out of 10. I'm really excited to see what the future of the DCEU holds. Is it a little bit of a mess? Yeah, but I think the Flashpoint movie will be enough to kind of fix all that. Closing this ranking up, what are your favorite DCEU films? Let me know in the comments below, and as always guys, thanks for watching.